everyone, and welcome back to another colour pencil tutorial where I'm going to be drawing this male short hair using Faber-Castell polychromos, and the colours I'm using are the black, the walnut brown, the burnt umber, the Bistre, the burnt sienna, and also I'll be using the Caran d'Ache Luminance pencil in white. I'll also leave all those materials in the description below so that you can check them out as well. So for you guys over on Patreon, I've got the real-time 3-hour version of this complete with voiceover so that you can draw this along with me and you'll learn all my processes and stuff like that. Anyway, so the first thing that I'm doing is I'm laying down the black pencil and I'm blocking in the darkest areas of the drawing. So on my reference photo, I'm just looking at where all the shadowed areas are, so the areas that were really dark, pretty much black, and I'm just using that black pencil to block them in so I have a better idea of where all the shadows are. To do this, I'm making sure that my pencil is really sharp, and I'm also going in lines that are going with the direction that the hair's flowing in. I'm not just going in circular motions. With hair, I like to actually follow the direction that the hair's going in so it has a lot more motion and looks more realistic. So now I'm just pressing a bit harder on the areas that were really dark just to make them more shadowed. But I'm not applying too much pressure at the moment just because I don't want to damage the tooth of the paper, because I want to apply lots and lots of layers. So the paper that I'm using is the Archer's watercolour hot press paper. Normally I would use the Strathmore Bristol paper, but I didn't actually have any of that on me at the time. So now what I'm doing is I'm just applying some of those browns, so the walnut brown, the Bistre and the burnt umber. And then I go over and I blend this out and smoothing it with the white colour pencil to help get rid of all the graininess. And then I just layer some more colours over it because it kind of desaturates the colour. So I like to replenish that by adding some more of the browns. I use some of the darker browns at the roots, and then where the areas are more highlighted on the reference photo, I just use the white and the Bistre colour. And as you can see, I'm always going with the direction that the hair is going in. Not every section of the hair is going in the same direction, so make sure that you're noticing each clump of hair and what direction it's going in. Also, when you're drawing hair, make sure that you're not just drawing every little strand, just focus on it in terms of clumps, and it will make it a lot easier, because if you're to look at someone's hair, you can't see all the individual strands, you just see it as clumps of hair. So make sure you're just trying to render the individual clumps and it will look more realistic. So now what I'm doing is I'm just filling in the rest of the hair with that Bistre colour, and I was just blocking it all in and leaving certain areas white for the highlights. And now I'm going over the top of that with that burnt umber, and again that's mostly at the roots. Towards the ends of the sections of hair it was more highlighted, so I'm really just looking at the reference photo, and wherever it's shadowed I'm using that black and the burnt umber, and then where it's more highlighted I'm using the white and the Bistre colour. So as you can see, I'm always keeping my pencil really sharp. With the Faber-Castell polychromos, they hold their point a lot better, whereas the Caran d'Ache Luminance and the Prismacolor kind of wear down easier because they're creamier. But that's why I like doing hair with the polychromos, just because they maintain their point so much better, and that's why I really like using them for fur as well. So now I'm just going back in with that black and I'm just darkening up some of the shadows. It's really important to make sure that your shadows are as dark as they need to be and your highlights are as bright as they need to be. So make sure that you're getting that contrast right to make it look even more realistic and pop out of the paper. So now I'm using that Caran d'Ache white pencil just to soften everything out. As you can see, it desaturates the colour a lot, but it also makes it look a lot smoother. And if you're not pressing too hard on the pencil, this means that you can then go and add lots more layers over the top. So it doesn't really matter if it's losing the saturation. What's important is that you're getting rid of all that white graininess and you're giving it much more of a smooth finish. So I'm just using that burnt umber, and I'm always layering the brown colours over the top of the black, because if you were to use black on its own then it would look quite flat and it might not have the same richness as you can when you layer the colours over the top. So make sure that you don't just leave it black, layer lots of colours over the top and it will just look like a really dark brown. So I'm still just going in with that burnt umber, and I'm just darkening up the shadows. And now I'm going in with the black and darkening up the really darkest shadows. And so I just keep dotting myself around the drawing and just keep building things up. I always just keep going and adjusting certain areas if I need to. And you need to be flexible like that, where you don't just think once you've finished one area that you're not going to go back and change it, because sometimes you can do an area next to it and then realise that the area you just did needs to be lighter or darker. So you need to be flexible in going and altering the areas that you've done to make it look as good as it can be. So now I'm just going in with that Bistre and I'm using that to fill in all of the little gaps. And then I'll go over the white, and I'm using this really sharply with quite a bit of pressure. And I'm using this to pull out some more of the strong highlights and just to break up all those individual clumps and really start to render the hair and make it look realistic, because at the moment there's not much contrast, there's not many highlights at all. So I'm just adding them in. And I'm just focusing on the main highlights from the reference photo. You really don't have to draw every single strand, just the clumps, and it will look realistic. Again, if you need to sharpen the pencil, then make sure that you keep your pencil really sharp. Otherwise, your highlights might come off too thick and too strong. But it doesn't really matter, because you could go back over with the browns and really just refine them and cover up that white pencil if you need to. Now what I'm doing is I'm going in with my craft knife and etching blade, and I'm just using that to scrape off the colour pencil in certain areas. And this allows me to get little details and just to make it a lot more realistic, because you can scratch off all the little details that you want. So now I'm working on the shorter patch of hair, and I first just laid down an area of brown over the whole of the section of hair, and now I'm going in with the black colour pencil and the brown and really starting to define the shadows to lay down a lot of that colour. And then I'm going in with the white colour pencil just to pull out the highlights and give it more of a texture and just to show the individual clumps of the hair. But this is a lot shorter hair, so you need to make sure that you make it look shorter than the top of the hair. And to do that, just don't use as longer pencil strokes. Just make sure that you're just drawing short hair. And just draw basically whatever you see on the reference photo. I know when you're drawing like hair or eyes or something that you see all the time, you think that you know how it should look, and so you might not look at your reference photo as much, but I look at my reference photo every few seconds, so definitely keep looking at your reference photo and keep making sure that you're on this right track. And so I'm just adding some more of that black. And I'm just going back and forth with the different colours until I get it how I like it. And again, I'm using that little craft knife to help pull up some of those individual little strands of hair. Okay, so now I'm just doing that little bit of hair at the bottom. I just used some black and some brown. And now I'm going in with an electric eraser. And I'm just doing this because some of the areas got a bit too dark and I wanted to lighten them up a bit. So if you use the electric eraser, it will lift off some of that coloured pencil, which means that you can then go over it with the other colours you want and kind of fix that. And you should be able to do that if you haven't applied too much pressure onto the paper so that it hasn't become damaged. So now I'm just tweaking everything, refining some of those details. But yeah, I'm pretty much finished with this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and found it useful. Like I said, the real-time version is available over on my Patreon, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below if you want to check that out. So now I'm just quickly adding some little flyaway hairs and stuff like that. But yeah, also I've left the link to all of my materials that I'm using in the description below as well. Next week I will be doing a colour pencil portrait tutorial, so if you're new to my channel and you want to see more tutorials, then make sure that you hit that subscribe button. I'd also appreciate any likes and shares on this video. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!